All right, so the homework this time was to find the surface area of 8 cylinders. And surface area is a little more complicated than volume. These are going to take you a little bit longer. They're a little bit more writing. There's not really anything I can do about that. So there's a few different ways you could write this formula or think about it. The best thing you can do with this formula, though, is just remember the pieces that it comes from when we derived it in class by deconstructing that cylinder. That can help you piece the formula together rather than just trying to memorize it as a bunch of pi symbols, r's, and h's, or whatever. That's a very difficult thing to do, and it's kind of pointless, too. It's better to have an understanding of where the pieces of the formula come together and be able to fit it back together logically than to just memorize it. So when I think about the formula for surface area, I'm going to write it up over here. I think about the fact that I need the area of the two circular bases, so the area of this top base and the area of this bottom base. And I know that the area of a circle is pi r squared, and I've got two of them. So that's 2 times pi r squared. So that's like half of the formula. That gets me the circular bases. And then I know I need the area of the rectangular body. Remember, when you unwrap this cylinder, it just comes out as a rectangle. And I can get that by multiplying the height by the circumference of one of these circles. Because remember, when you unravel this cylinder, this side of the rectangle, this dimension of the rectangle along the top, winds up being equal to the circumference of this circle. So the circumference of the circle is 2 pi r, right? Pi times the diameter, but 2 times r is the same thing as diameter. And then I have to multiply that by the height, this right here. So this is the way I always think of the formula, 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. Some people like to write a d here instead of the 2 pi r though. So sometimes you see it as 2 pi r squared plus 2, no, sorry, there wouldn't be a 2 there, sorry, times plus, sorry, I keep saying time. Okay, let me start over. 2 pi r squared plus pi times the diameter times h. That's another way you see it. And then there's this other way that is maybe a little bit harder to understand, but if you're really good with it, it can be a little bit faster. I'm going to move over here where there's a little bit more room. If you look at this top version, notice that both terms, here and here, have factors of 2, pi, and r in them. This one has a 2, a pi, and an r. And so we could factor that 2 pi r out, 2 pi r, and then just write in parentheses the stuff that's left. If I factored out 2 pi r from this first term, I'd be left with just an r, because I divided the 2 out, I divided the pi out, and I divided one of these r's from an r squared out. Leaves me with a singular r. And then plus whatever's left when I factor out from this term. Well, I factor out the 2, I factor out the pi symbol, I factor out the r, the only thing that's left is the h. And so doing the formula this way, this is much harder to understand logically. Like there's no breakdown of like, oh, this part's the circles and this part's the rectangles. But it's nice because you could argue that it's faster. It's faster to just add the radius and the height and then multiply by 2 pi r than it is to do 2 pi r squared, save that number, do 2 pi r h, save that number, and then add those two numbers at the end. So I'm going to mostly be doing it this way because this is the most logical way, I believe, and the way that hopefully makes the most sense to you. But if you're feeling confident, maybe mess around with this way a little bit. All right, so over here, I've got a cylinder with diameter 24. That means its radius is 12 because I just divided the diameter by 2 in my head. And its height is 10. I guess you don't necessarily have to write that, but I will. And now remember, when you write this formula out with all the calculations, you need a ton of space. Like it takes a long way. So I'm going to start way over here on the edge of the paper and hopefully like not go too much into my space for question number 2. So I'm just going to follow the formula like a set of instructions. It says to do 2 times pi times the radius squared, which is 12 squared. Then I have a plus symbol. Then I have to do 2 times pi times the radius times the height. And then the most important thing where most people mess up, if they mess up on these, is this right here. You've got to do the addition last. Super important. And the reason for that is if you think about your order of operations, PEMDAS, GEMDAS, whatever your preference is. Well, this right here, when you square a number, this little 2 here, that's an exponent. That's what this E stands for here. So it's really early in the order of operations. It comes before multiplication and division and addition and subtraction. So that's why I always say to do that first. Then all this other stuff, here and here, these are all multiplications. And they come before addition in the order of operations as well. So this addition sign should be the last thing you do in this whole situation here. All right, so the way I usually like to do it is I'll do all this math over here, right? I'll square my radius and I'll multiply it by 2 and pi, and I get a number and I write it below here, save it for later. Then I do all this multiplication over here, 2 times pi times the radius and the height, and I get a number and I write it here. And then the last thing I do is I add those 2 numbers that I got as the last step. And so that's exactly how I'm going to do this one. I'm going to start by squaring that radius. 12 times 12 should be 144. Yep. And then I'm going to multiply by pi. And then I'm going to multiply by 2. And so over here on this side, I got 904.32. And I'm just going to write that down, save it, and now I'm going to do this side. I got 2 times 3.14 times 12 times 10. I get 753.6. My last step is to add these 2 numbers. So I've already got one on the screen, so I'll just type in plus 904.32. And so the answer is 1,657.92 inches squared. So this time we're only measuring a 2-dimensional measurement of this cylinder. We're talking about how much area its like outer shell covers. And so you should have inches squared for that 2-dimensional measurement. All right, let's do another one. I'll skip down to, I'll just go straight down. Let's do number 3. Like I said in the last video, the fact that it's laying on its side doesn't change anything. This is still the diameter. This is still the height. It's just like a can that got knocked over. All right, so I want the radius. It give me diameter equals 22. That means the radius equals 11, and the height is 9. So I'm just going to follow the formula, like I said, of instructions again. It says to do 2 times 3.14 times the radius squared. So that's going to be 11 squared. And then I have a plus symbol, and it says to do 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 11, times the height, which is 9. And just like last time, I'm going to do all the math on this side, get a number, write it down. Then I'll do all the math on this side, get a number, write it down. The last step will be to add those 2 numbers. So I start with the exponent, 11 squared. 11 times 11, I think is 122, but let's see, 121. And then times 3.14, and then times 2. So over here on the left side of the plus sign, I got 759.88. I'll write my plus symbol. Now I'm just going to save that number, and I'm going to do all the multiplications on the other side. 2 times 3.14 times 11 times 9 equals 621.72. And then my last step is just add that to that previous number I got, 759.88. That's 1,381.6 meters squared. All right, I'll do one last one for you. And just for fun, I'll do it the other way, this factored way that I think a lot of people would agree is a little bit faster. So I'll just do number 4. But I see that they give me the diameter on this one, so I got to cut that in half. If the diameter is 6, then the radius is 3, my height is 10. And so now let's set it up like the way this one says. If you don't like this way, if this isn't your thing, go ahead and do it the way we just practiced the previous 2, and you should still get the same answer as me. If you get a different answer, one of us messed up. It might be me, who knows? So I'm just going to follow this set of instruction now. It says 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 3, and then in parentheses, and I'm kind of already using parentheses, so just to make it visually different, I'm going to use a bracket instead. I do r plus h. That's 3 plus 10, my radius plus my height. And now you could like do this multiplication and then like distribute into the brackets or whatever. That would be like the slow, inefficient way to do it though. I'm just going to add the numbers in the brackets and then just multiply that by what I get out here. So what this really is 2 times 3.14 times 3 times 3 plus 10, which is 13. And so now it's like I have a few less operations to do than the other way. Now I'm just doing 2 times 3.14 times 3 times 13, and that equals 244.92 feet squared. So the benefit of this way is I didn't have to like do two separate numbers and then like save them, write them down, and add them up at the end. So I think a lot of people prefer this way, but I think this way might be a little safer. I'm not sure. It's up to you. All right, I'll leave the rest for you.